Please call if found. In the woods behind her house sat a pile of logs, perhaps trees that fell down or part of the old mill that was there years before. They played there as kids, running down the creek nearby, playing hide and seek. The group consisted of 6, Katie, Jessica, Colby, Keen, Calvin, and Louise. Playing hide and seek became an after-school tradition. Even if one of them couldn't make it, the game continued. They'd laugh and scream and all together have a great time. They were kids after all. They did this for years. Even some evenings take food and blankets to sit and eat and tell stories. Little woven picnic blankets sat in the grass at the bottom of the grass hill near the creek. When the food was finished, they packed up and hid their stuff under the closest tree to the bridge to be able to come back at the end of the games. Then it all came to a stop the day she wasn't found. Katie lost her way in the evening of Friday, November 7th, 2014. She was 12 at the time but had been playing in these woods for years, stumbling blindly in the woods, tripping over logs and roots. Katie felt meaningless under a sky of stars and falling leaves. She'd pick up sticks that Winnie would have liked and throw them as if to play fetch with the dog that wasn't there. She would wander following the North Star like her dad had taught her to do when they used to go camping. The North Star will always guide you home. Honey, she remembered his voice in her head. She'd look up to find the star every few minutes to make sure she was still walking in the correct direction. The woods got denser and the ground more soft. Her shoes started to stick to the floor, and the leaves covered the sky. Katie was lost. She knew it now. Cold and alone in the trees by her house, with no hope of getting back. Hide and seek was fruitless now. She would never be found. She and her friends knew the way to the logs, like the back of their hands. Now all that sits on these logs are pictures. Please call if found. There were hundreds of them now, and it all started with Katie. It had been many years since kids' faces were plastered onto milk cartons, so flyers in plastic wallets, and tape were all through the trees. From the opening gate behind her house all the way to the bridge over the creek, trees held faces of smiling children and phone numbers to call if they were ever seen again. Even in winter the trees stood tall, and the black and white faces still smiled. In summer the leaves started to cover them, but as the season turned their smiles escaped nature to see the light once more. Yesterday, Katie's mother's phone rang. It was 6 p.m. but already pitch black. Winter did that to the English sky. It turned it as dark as coal before most people even started making the final meal of the night. The phone still rang as Janice sat on the sofa, glass of wine in hand. It was the house phone, or landline as she liked to call it. She never wanted to unplug it, as it was the only phone number she knew Katie had memorized. Leaning over, she picked up the phone. "Hello?" she asked, hanging her head down into the speaker of the old machine, almost tasting the old plastic. Her mouth was so close. Or maybe the smell of it was so pungent it overtook her senses. Static. "Hello? Katie, if it's you, please say something," she pleaded. Static. "I am hanging up now. Mummy, please. Dark." The words cut through the static only enough to hear partial sentences. Janice knew the voice anyway. She began to tear up, but the words said into the phone sat heavy on her chest. "Katie? Honey? Tell me where you are. I'll come and find you. I promise. It's dark. I miss you. Follow the N. Static. The phone line cut out. Shit, Janice yelled. She threw the wine glass at the wall by the family photo she had hung on the wall. Shattering glass flying everywhere, it knocked down one of the pictures as it exploded. The photo of Katie, the one used for the flyers. She stands smiling with her bright pink camisole top on, ice cream in hand, as happy as any child could be. Janice picked it up out of the broken glass, tears falling onto it as she crouched down. She couldn't get back up. She was sobbing hysterically. It felt so real. It was Katie on the other line. Even after a decade, a mother always knows, but her voice was still high and childish, as if she hasn't aged a day. Janice felt a pang in her chest. Her daughter called. Katie had called. The world felt as if it stopped spinning, or as if it was spinning faster. Janice couldn't tell anymore. She may as well have been hanging from the ceiling by her feet. In all her years alone, she hadn't considered hearing her daughter's voice again. She pulled herself up to her feet and walked out of the back door. She headed for the trees. No time to stop and put shoes on. Janice ran towards the creek, her feet now covered in dirt and blood from branches and stones along the path. The creek still flowed along the width of the trees. Janice did all she could think to do, throw a stick from the floor as far into the water as she could, anger seeping out of her. Janice remembered walking down here with Katie and their old dog Winnie. She wished they'd never moved here, never stepped foot in this forest. The woods stole her daughter. Janice woke up in a ball on the floor next to the sofa. There were no glass shards. All the photos were on the wall. The phone had been unplugged with dust settled on the outlet. No sign of what she believed to have happened last night. She felt meaningless. If last night was a dream, then Katie is still a missing person. No leads, no calls. No sign of Katie for a decade. A stack of flyers were spread out on the coffee table in front of her, smiling faces staring up at the ceiling on weathered paper. Janice sifted through the pages, but they all said the same phrase under the photos of the children. Please call if found.